Hello, my friends, or more specifically, Anna, Lexi, Tara, and Carter. I'm supposed to shout out certain names at the beginning of my wrap-ups. I hope I haven't done any of those ones before. Let's talk about September. Okay, September is a tough one to look back on because I feel as though sometimes you guys tell me, like, if you just read books that you wanted to read, you would have a higher average rating. And that's not always true because, like, I hype myself up about certain books and I want to read them so bad and then they go poorly. But this month in particular, the ones that I selected for myself pretty much went well for the most part. And the ones that I was hesitant about, I did rate lowly a lot of the time. So my 3.5 average, yet again, could have definitely been improved, and I don't think I'm going to hit that 3.7, 3.8 by the end of the year like I had hoped, because right now I'm at a 3.58 as an average for the entire year. But you know, anything can happen. My ratings for the month, there were so many 4 stars, and not just 4 stars, but like 4.25, 4.5. I had a good time for a lot of the time. 2 5 stars, 5 3 stars, 6 2 stars. Yeah, that one hurts. If we look at the top one, I did purchase a lot. This is like where the books came from. I purchased a lot of books that I read, but I read 5 from my already existing TBR, so shout out to me. And I borrowed 2 books. I listened to 1 audiobook completely all the way through, and then 9 books that I did like a tandem experience, physical and audio, and 13 books that I read exclusively the book in my hand. It was pretty evenly split of authors that I've read from before and ones that were new to me. I did do a couple sequels that went interestingly. Genre-wise, mostly horror, 6 fantasy, 2 mystery, 3 romance, 2 fiction, 1 nonfiction, 3 sci-fi. But like the sci-fi ones, I actually don't really know where to put them because some of them are more realistic, some of them are more horror, so I don't know. Let's go through all of my ratings and then review the 4 books that I haven't talked to you about yet in a vlog. And then we'll go through superlatives at the end, which is my favorite part. So I did a vlog this month where I read your fantasy romance recommendations, and I gave Thrown in the Dark 3 stars. I gave Radiance 2 stars. I gave The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy 3 stars. My notebook says I gave it 4 stars. In this moment, it feels more like a 3.5, 3.75. And then I gave Empire of Shadows a 5. At first I gave it a 4.5, and then I was like, no, this is a 5 star. This is a 5 star. I found another 5-star romantic fantasy. It's historical, fantasy is low, definitely tension with the romance, kind of Indiana Jones vibes. I have never seen those movies, but like I know the vibe. I had a good time with this. I don't like the title. I think it's just weird for what it is, and I don't like the cover because the quality is different. It's clearly like different stock images that were taken to build it, and it's not really cohesive, but I do like the colors. You didn't ask. I'm just about to go out and buy a physical copy, and I want to complain about it because I have to move these tabs over before I return this to the library because I really, really liked portions of this book, so much that I tabbed a library book. Okay, I did this video, what was it called? It was like 10 years of TBRs, where I didn't actually read 10 years worth of TBRs. I went through different prompts that you guys gave me to pick certain books from certain years across the last 10 years of my channel. I read 5 things. One of them I didn't want to buy, that's Stay Sweet. I ended up giving it a 3, I think, by the end. And then one of them I did order and it just never showed up. And that is The Baby Is Mine, which I gave 4 stars. Then I also read Camp Zero. This was a 2.75. I read The Breakup Pact, which was 3, I think. And then The Appeal by Janice Hallett is a 4.5. This one I can't quite give a 5, but it was really, really close. So I had a win in each video. This video, the reality show video, was also a win, and I wasn't quite expecting that. This book, All This and More, I was hyped for a year and a half ago when I bought it, and then everybody's been hating on it since. I thought this was fantastic, and I gave it a 4.25, a 4.5. Then I read the one that was a little disappointing. It was a reality show based video, and so the ones that were more sci-fi, dystopian, like those ones worked for me, which makes sense. That the romance didn't quite, but Which You Would, I gave, did I give this a 2? It says 2.75, and that feels a little bit generous in this moment. It was just a little too quirky, but I did like the concept of it, so I don't know. And then The Compound was a 5. This is another one that I was excited about, and then people have had really mixed reviews for this all year, and so I've been like, oh, I don't know, but I really thought I would love it. And so I made everyone read it with me, like my channel members. And there was a mix of ratings there, but for the most part, people seem to enjoy this. And I think I convinced a lot of people to bump up their rating when I was talking about all the things that I appreciated about this. So reality show, dystopian, look at all my tabs. Loved this. I did a video, of course, like every month, the buzzword reading challenge, where I read 2 things. I wasn't going into it expecting to read either of these 2, but they fit the prompts and I wanted to read them, so I did. I ended up giving The Tainted Cup a 3. I wanted to like this more than I did. And then Catabasis, I gave a 4.25, 4.5. I liked this a lot more than it seems a lot of readers do, and that's fine with me. I don't need to convince anybody that this is incredible because I've heard all the critiques and I get it. Then the latest vlog I posted for September was a horror one where I was predicting my ratings of things. And I did predict that this one would get a low rating, and then it did, so I probably shouldn't have read it. You Were Meant to Be Human got a 2. I was hesitant to read We Love You Bunny because I just didn't think it needed to exist, and I felt that same way by the end. I thought it would be a 2, and it was indeed a 2. And then I had a bunch of 4 stars. So Spread Me, thought would be a 4, was a 4. This is an interesting one. Play Nice, I thought I would rate it a little bit lower, and this ended up being a 4, which just makes me so excited because I want to read more Rachel Harrison. I want to see what everyone loves about her, and I saw it in this one. And then The Possession of Alba Diaz I thought would be a 4 or a 5, and it ended up being a 4.5. So that was perfect, and it's the 3rd time I have given that rating to Isabel Cañas. I think she's doing like gothic romance, but with a plot so incredibly well. Can't believe how many 4.5 and 5 stars I had this month. Like, I just feel a renewed sense of joy, and going through those all and just reminding you of my ratings reminded me that this was a good month. There were a couple flops, but I'm going to talk about the 4 that I haven't talked about yet. Well, technically I did do an entire live show, so I have spoken about this, but it wasn't in a vlog. So if you want my concise thoughts on the bind up of Killer on the Road and The Babysitter Lives, I gave Killer on the Road a 5. Originally, I went into the live show saying that I liked The Babysitter Lives more, but it's really that I liked the concept more, and I can't give away what actually happens. I'm only going to tell you like the reality portions of these because like that's the initial pitch of the story, but they both go in like, you know, supernatural horror directions as Stephen Graham Jones does. But then talking about Killer on the Road and everyone else talking about Killer on the Road, I just appreciated a little bit more. Something that is similar with this Stephen Graham Jones, if you've read other things by him, is they are long. They go on and on, even though they are both like short stories, novellas. They're both just a little bit too long. But Killer on the Road is about this girl. She's a teenager and she doesn't have the best family life, and she plans to leave to do something on her own and figure out, you know, how to take care of herself. And so she goes kind of hitchhiking. Her father was a trucker and she wants to, you know, get a ride places, and suddenly she finds her friends and her ex roll up in a car the same place she is, and they're like, get in, we're gonna, you know, help you, support you, whatever. And pretty quickly they're getting chased by this serial killer on the road, and it's just this like fight for survival. Something that's a little bit different for both of these stories from typical Stephen Graham Jones is it really gets into the gore. Like, he does scary stuff, he does intense stuff. There is gore in some of his books, but like this was really ramped up. There's people like in both of these stories peeling their faces off and like eating eyeballs and like really disgusting graphic imagery, but also paired with really heartwarming stories. So I just thought these were both really good. The first chapter of Killer on the Road is so fantastic. Like, it just starts out with a bang and it doesn't let go. And if you want to talk about this or you want to see what other people were thinking while they were reading it, the Fable discussion, that's where we talk about the Literally Dead Book Club picks, it's still open. Like, if you go to the page, it's right now our next pick, the Treasure Hunters Club, but you can click this little archive history button and you can see all of the discussions we've had in the past. So if you're reading any of the book club picks later, you can still go read and contribute to the discussion. The Babysitter Lives is about this babysitter who goes to take care of these twins, and she has recently had a bad experience with one of her charges, and so that helps explain like why she's so committed to staying in this house, because it's the kind of horror story where you're like yelling at the main character, why don't you just leave? And I guess the initial pitch I can give you is she goes into the house, takes care of these twins, and they pretty quickly go missing, but also like introduce her to a part of the house that like shouldn't exist, I guess. I gave that one a 4. It was my favorite concept, but this one had a better execution. Next, I have Bone Dance. I read this a while ago now, and honestly, it's a pretty forgettable one, unfortunately. So I don't know if my pitch of it will be very good. This was a channel members pick out of my TBR jar. It's by Emma Bull, and it's like this, what do you call it? Like kind of cyberpunk dystopian. There are basically these horsemen characters who can body swap, steal bodies, and they are responsible for the world that we're in the future, and where it's at, and how like everything is bad now. Maybe all the horsemen are gone, maybe some of them are still around. We're following this main character named Sparrow, and Sparrow is a trader. They survive and they live by finding like old VHS tapes and selling them on like this kind of black market. This was written in, I think, the early 90s. And so like the idea is that the world kind of, I guess, stopped then, and only the technology that would have existed then is going to be what, you know, the author could imagine the future would look like, is reflecting on like, oh, the VHS tapes that everybody loves and everybody wants these movies. And there's somebody who is looking for and willing to pay a lot for a movie that talks about the horsemen or shows the horsemen. So we have Sparrow, who's on this journey to find this VHS tape, and also like just like surviving. And there's this kind of found family vibe. There's various characters who come into the story, and there's these warm friendships, and they comfort each other when people die, but they're also just on this mission. And it's a very, I don't know, like futurist, like Blade Runner kind of story that isn't necessarily my vibe, but the character journey is. I had a fine time reading it. Like it was interesting. It was confusing, but you could tell like kind of intentionally confusing. And then once you understand what's happening, I don't think the book necessarily makes up for the fact that it's confusing. Maybe this is less than a 3. At the time I gave it a 3. And I said that it felt like reading as if I had read, what's the first book? Call Down the Hawk, which is like the spin-off to the Raven Cycle. It felt like if I had just read that first book. It felt like there was something before this. There isn't, but it felt to me like there was an entire series that came before this that explained a lot of things, and we met all the characters there and like grew all of these relationships already. And then I was dropped into this and I was just supposed to already understand everything, and that's not necessarily my favorite reading experience. Overall, I felt like it was fun and it was interesting, but ultimately, now a month later, feels very forgettable. On Truth and Reconciliation Day, I picked up 21 Things You Need to Know About Indigenous Self-Government, which is the kind of, not sequel or spin-off, it's just maybe a companion to this one that I read and loved a couple years ago, 21 Things You May Not Know About the Indian Act. Definitely recommend this one. And then I think this one was created as a kind of companion to explore more about self-government and like what that means, and the different relationships that exist within the Canadian government and Indigenous folks, and how it could be improved. It is about dismantling the Indian Act and what that means and what that looks like and how it can exist. And it didn't feel as much like a bunch of points like the first book of how to actively like affect individual change. There was some of that for sure, but it was more just like a general vibe of like, here's why we need to dismantle the Indian Act. Here's how it's already happening in different ways, how Indigenous knowledge can be used, how groups can partner better, especially with like economic reconciliation, I feel like was a big intent of this. And then it also took the time to kind of explore or dispel certain myths, like tax exemptions for First Nations people. And I think a lot of people could have a lot to learn from this. I would most recommend it for people who kind of don't have any First Nations people in their lives, or don't live in a community that is really not in touch with their First Nations people. The community that I live in was specifically called out and mentioned a couple times in the history of certain tribes in the area. So that was really interesting. It talked about corruption, it talked about casinos, it talked about pipelines, and I think there's definitely a lot for people to learn in here. I gave it a 4-star. Okay, and then lastly, I've been putting this one off, I don't want to talk about it. Sweet Heat by Bolu Babalola. I was hesitant to pick up this the same way I was hesitant to pick up We Love You Bunny, because I didn't need a sequel. I never wanted a sequel. I like when stories just end and I don't want to know where the characters are in the future. Why'd you pick this up, Kayla? I don't know. This was a 5-star romance for me, right? So like anything that this author puts out, I kind of want to read. This is going to be my most subjective opinion of all time. And though I'm giving this a 2, I don't want anyone to think that I'm not recommending it, because I actually think that people will love this, especially because it is so emotionally romantic. And that's something that I think people are looking for. I was definitely missing the fun because, you know, a lot of times when a relationship begins, it is fun and it's banter, and it had fake dating. And the relationship between Kiki and Malachi is one of my favorites. Like, I love them as a couple. And I think Bolu Babalola does too. I think she just really wanted to write another book about Malachi. And how perfect and wonderful and awesome he is. And she just wanted to write a couple sex scenes with this guy. And so she did. Unfortunately, like, Kiki is not with him. Like, they're not in a relationship at the start of this book. Yet there are sex scenes with him, multiple, in the first, like, third of this book. And it just felt so strange. The way the timelines were done. The best thing I can compare it to is like watching the Gilmore Girls Year in a Life series, where you started out and suddenly Rory, who you've been watching for 10 years, is with a different person and living a different life than you ever expected. And it's kind of just like you have to adjust your expectations right away. So this book kicks off with Kiki being in a different relationship. And that's not completely outside of the realm of like reality. This is a college relationship, and I don't think, like, though they definitely have this incredible connection and it's so fun and they definitely seem like they should be together forever, you can see a reality in which they would break up in the future. So it's not crazy to think this book kicks off with like reigniting their love story. She's with someone else, and throughout the book realizes that like he's not the one for her, and also she's not living the life that she wants, which I can appreciate because I think that happens for a lot of people. And as you're watching Year in the Life and the Gilmore Girls thing and Rory, you want her to get what she wants, and you respect that like people end up in places that they shouldn't have. But there's also just a lot to trudge through before you get there. And so though I respect that the book obviously needed that, like, how are you going to restart a love story unless you have to, like, you have to start somewhere that's not great. But just following Kiki being unhappy in this relationship for a while and just like talking shit about this guy she was with, like, it was not a good time for me. I did not enjoy it. And it's not that I don't appreciate seeing characters struggle, because I actually really do, but just, it was so negative. Like, I couldn't see how she got in this relationship to begin with. I don't think there was enough evidence of her being in this relationship. I think that this book was written because Bolu Babalola had a lot of things she wanted to say. She had a lot of messages she wanted to give, and we got those. This book is practically 500 pages, and there were these big, long monologues where people were talking about everything they've learned in life and things that they want for each other, and just these big exclamations of love and passion and friendship. And even during the breakup, like, there were just these very long, intense passages. And I think that that's great because it's empowering. She had a lot of things she wanted to tell the reader. I just don't know that Kiki and Malachi needed to be the vehicle to tell us that and to give us that. I don't know why she just didn't write a different book with different characters. Like, I don't know why this needed to be a sequel. I would have liked to hear all of these messages and see all this happening with people I wasn't already invested in. It kind of started to give the vibes of Magnolia Parks. It was like all of these people hanging out, like being best friends in like this wealthy lifestyle. And then she was deciding between different boys, and like constantly the whole book is just her thinking about her past relationships and everything that's gone wrong and everything that's gone right and how people betrayed each other. And it's just like a lot of reminiscing that felt so much like Magnolia Parks. But because the first book did not give Magnolia Parks at all, it really just felt like such a different vibe, and I was not on board with it at all. And I really just think that this author didn't want to let go of Malachi. I think she's just in love with him as a character and wanted him to just be like this incredible romantic being and like incredible in bed and just like so perfect. It just didn't play off of Kiki necessarily well, because you also can't let go of who Kiki is as a character. She's very strong-willed and she knows what she wants. I just don't think how she existed in here was right. It's like she still was given all of the qualities that we had established in here, because you can't make her an entirely different person, but then her actions didn't really match her personality. Oh, this was such a struggle to get through. Like, it took me a week. I kept picking up and putting it down, and I was like, I can't believe I'm still reading this. But at the same time, I promise you, it wasn't bad. Like, this was not a bad book by any means, and I think a lot of people will get a lot out of this. But anyway, let's get to the superlatives. Best book that I read this month. Well, I gave out those 2 5-stars. I think because I was really confident about this being a 5, I have to say that this was my favorite book of the month. Best sequel. Oh God. Okay, so I have to choose between Sweet Heat, We Love You Bunny, and if we can call this a sequel, I guess I have to say this. What a boring answer. A nonfiction was my favorite sequel because the other two, no. Best audiobook? I'm gonna go with The Possession of Alba Diaz because I remember this one having dual narration. I think I went back and forth quite a bit between the audiobook and the physical book. But every time I picked up the audiobook, I don't remember having any issues with it. Biggest surprise, that's definitely Play Nice because I haven't really loved Rachel Harrison. I've DNF'd things. I've given low ratings a couple times. So Play Nice was definitely a good one. But also I would say All of This and More, just because everyone else's low ratings like almost made me not read this. Well, it made me not read it for the last year and a half, 2 years that I've owned it. Biggest disappointment, sadly, is going to be Which You Would, because even though there were books I rated lower, I think I went into them with low expectations to begin with. This one that's like a competition about magic and it's a love story, I just thought would be so good, but it was really cringy. An author I would read more from. Okay, definitely going to read more in this series, The Empire of Shadows, the Raiders of the Arcana. Can we just appreciate for 1 second the fact that it says book 1 on the front, because I hate when books don't establish which one in the series they are easily. It's on the spine too. Thank you very much. I will be buying this entire trilogy. I think the third one is out in November, so I think I might read the second one in October, third one in November. I think maybe it's a longer spanning series, but I'm just gonna knock all of these out because I love these characters. There is a question, favorite character. I might as well answer Ellie and Adam. Couldn't remember their names, but I promise they're my favorite couple. Although also I have a favorite character in The Compound. There's a bunch of people on this reality show, and the one that stood out the most is Andrew. He was kind of like the humor and made things a little more lighthearted and was like really going out of his way to do things that other people were uncomfortable with and just kind of broke the ice. That was a good vibe. Also though, authors I want to read more, I'm gonna go back to that one. Sorry, Kayla, editing. The Appeal. I liked enough that I want to read like all of Janice Hallett now. I was thinking about picking her for a book club pick, but it seems like there is no consensus of which one of hers is the best. Like everyone has such different feelings about it. They're like, this one's the best. No, this one's the best. And there's no, even though there's like one that has a higher average rating than the others, people say like, oh, that one's not as interesting. So if I were to pick her, if you've made it this far in the video and you've read a bunch of her stuff, please let me know which one you would recommend would be a good one to talk about in the Literally Dead book club capacity. The book I would recommend most, I do feel like if you like the things that I like as far as Emily Wilde and Veronica and Stoker, I'm going to recommend Empire of Shadows the most. And then I would also recommend one I didn't like pretty broadly, The Tainted Cup, though I only gave it a 3. I definitely see why people love that one. Best cover. Sadly, my favorite cover is one that I'm going to be unhauling at the end of the year because I didn't love it. Sweet Heat. I absolutely adore these colors. I think this is stunning. But also, let's give it up for Alba Diaz because this is absolutely stunning. I talked about in the vlog that I read this, like the cover designer here is doing incredible work with all of Isabel Cañas' stuff. Best title, I'm gonna say Play Nice. I don't think there's any bad titles here. I don't think there's anything that really like stands out. Play Nice, the idea that like you have to play nice with your family and play nice with this demon, this entity in this haunted house. I just like the vibe. I also like All This and More because it's a really heavy-handed line in this. We have a reality show and every single time the episode ends, it's like, you could have all of this and more. Definitely just fits the tone of the book. And that was all my questions. Let me know if you have any thoughts on anything that I read, any disagreements that you have, anything you want to read now or you don't want to read now. If you haven't seen any of my reviews for the books that I just went through really quickly in my ratings, there are blogs and I will link all of them down below. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye.